Welcome back to CCRC Review Session with Coach T. If you're watching the video right now, then you're preparing yourself for CCRC Test number 3. And if we look at the topic at least for CCRC Test 3, then that is going to be Chapter 8, 9, and 10. 8, 9, and 10. 8, 9 are the post-war of the United States, which deals with the creation of 2 constitutions. And then Chapter 10 would be the early years of the Republic, the test drive of the new Constitution through Adams and Washington's presidency, Washington and Adams' presidency. So if I were starting to study tonight, then I would probably take a look at my 3 phases of notes, and I would look at this post-war phase and look at these things that are discussed about Chapter 8 and 9. They discuss things like the creation of a new constitution, which is a body of law which embodies the idea of republicanism, which is the concept of people voting and people to represent them. Okay, that is why you are a republic. And then we talk about how this idea that the first constitution created was the Articles of Confederation, actually created during the war phase, but we discuss it in the post-war because they will realize that it is basically a piece of garbage document. Okay, well, the reason that it was so ineffective is because there was too much power given to the states, and we discussed this in 5 fingers of notes when we wrote on there 5 things that made it a bad document, like no power to pass taxes, no executive branch, no judicial branch, hard to pass laws, 9 out of 13, and then also hard to regulate trade or impossible to regulate trade. So we did discuss that while it was in effect for about 6 years or so, that it did get one good law passed, this idea of the Northwest Ordinance, creating the territories in the Northwest and setting up a system for bringing in states. But eventually the country will realize, as the rest of the world realizes also, that it is not very effective. And it takes a rebellion on U.S. soil to realize that. Shays' Rebellion, when farmers get upset about having to pay taxes and basically the whole economy in the United States, they're in the toilet because they can't pass tariffs and it's hard to regulate, again, trade because there's no power under the Articles. Do you want to pass a tariff to block the import of British shoes? No, I don't want to because I like British shoes, so therefore you cannot get 9 out of 13 to pass a law. So after Shays' Rebellion, you realize it's time to change for a new constitution, and you come up with a constitutional convention in Philadelphia, Independence Hall. And that whole meeting of those great men, 56 men that come together, okay, from 12 states, okay, Rhode Island doesn't want to show up, okay, they come up with a series of compromises. The Virginia Plan, New Jersey Plan. The Virginia Plan, let's base representation on the large states. New Jersey Plan, equal, smaller states. They put that together and sprinkle in some 3/5 compromise dealing with the representation of slaves. Let's count every slave as 3/5 of a human being towards taxation and representation. So after that, you have the Great Compromise, which creates the document that is probably one of your greatest documents, the U.S. Constitutions. And then obviously you got to take that Constitution, which embodies many political concepts that we put together in a very neat foldable with visuals and definitions and Bill of Rights on the back. You create a document that encompasses ideas such as popular sovereignty, power to the people, federalism, power shared between the national government and state governments, and then we discuss separation of powers. We separate the power of running the country into 3 branches, and they can check each other and keep themselves balanced. And then you put this document, this body of law, to the people in obviously 2 sides form. Federalists and anti-feds. Anti-feds don't like it, Federalists do. So what do? You have to write papers to get the anti-feds to change their mind. So in 1787, you have the convention to create it. By 88, you put it into effect because the Federalist Papers, written by Publius, right, Hamilton, Jay, Madison, convinced the anti-feds that this is a better document. We have gone from an Articles of Confederation where power was 90% states and 10% government to 50-50. Okay, and they get 9 out of 13 to agree by 88. By 91, all of the states are on board because you included something called the Bill of Rights. So I would take a look at these notes to kind of get myself refreshed. Then, after that, what do we do that dealt with Chapter 8 as a whole? We did Chapter 8 guided reading. We looked at Chapter 8 guided reading. We answered some questions. All the things that I just kind of went over are right here. So that's a good place to get started. Now, after we went over Chapter 8 guided reading, we started analyzing the Constitution fairly well. We talked about the 7 articles, the preamble, okay, the different parts of the, and you can also find that in your book. We looked at the Constitution in the book. But we did outline the first three articles right in here where we talked about the preamble. What does the preamble really mean? Don't just be happy in reciting. Know what everything means in there in order to form a more perfect union, not a perfect union, a better one. Establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense. You know, why ensure domestic tranquility? Make sure that Shays' Rebellion never happens again. We talked about qualifications for legislative branch, the powers delegated to Congress in Article 1, Section 8. Okay, all the things they can do as opposed to all the things they can't do. Some Latin terms in there, habeas corpus, ex post facto law, okay, bill of attainder, all those different things. But take a look right here, remember? We discussed right here, a very powerful clause in Article 1, Section 8, elastic clause. Then we learned our Bill of Rights. And then when we learned our Bill of Rights, I tried to teach you certain clauses to help you remember them, okay? And we had those clauses written on our notes, okay? We did chapter 8 and 9 where I taught you clauses to the Bill of Rights to help you remember them, okay? Whether they be the freedom of 5 or SPARP 1, Bill of Rights number 2, Amendment number 2, right to bear arms. 3, House with 3 windows. 3, the Quartering Act. What are you here for? 5, okay, due process and more, right? Double jeopardy, plead the 5th. 6, SPEEDY, speedy and public trial and more, because that also included bringing in witnesses and being told why you're there. 7, okay, $20 or more, trial by jury. 8, okay, pull out each fingernail, cruel and unusual punishment. 9, if it's not listed as a right, that does not mean that's still not your right, the paper saver amendments. And then 10, federalism. If it is not a federal power, it is a state power. So we discussed that on a set of notes, okay, which would have looked like this. Right here, we marked up some certain notes right over here, okay, on chapter 8, okay? And then we basically said that these right here, these amendments, these shorthand versions, or the simple definitions to our amendments, okay? It had all of them, but I taught you those clauses, okay? Then, what else did I have, okay? I also had the foldable that I showed you. We also went over this sheet right over here where we figured out where our amendments are being broken and which one, and we had to figure out which amendment was being broken. Then we did our foldable, okay, which I've already shown you on the Constitution. That would be a good thing to look at. We also did some notes right here, okay, where we talked about the 3 branches, executive, legislative, and judicial. Legislative is bicameral with 2 houses, because that's New Jersey and Virginia plan. The executive enforces the law, the judicial interprets. Even though we figure out that later on it's going to be M&M that gives the judicial a little bit more power, even though Washington, when he was the president, he tried to give it more power with the Judiciary Act, but they will eventually be equal after Marbury versus Madison, that we'll get to in a little bit later, okay? And like I said, I'm just going through some of these papers that I've collected here, so you're just going to have to bear with me. We also did these notes right over here where we compared and contrasted the Articles of Confederation to the U.S. Constitution, and we really focused on this amendment process, 2/3, 3/4, 2/3 of the houses, 3/4 of the states to get an amendment passed, okay? So this was a good sheet also to look at. Then, in order to prepare ourselves, we also had a Chapter 8 quiz, okay? I know we had that right here, forming a new government, okay? Multiple choice, okay? Short answer, a bonus question, okay? What else do I have here? Interpreting Bill of Rights, okay? We looked at some PowerPoints that are going to be hard to recreate. You can go back to the website and look at some of the notes that are listed there. We listened to a song on the Bill of Rights to help us with the clauses. Okay. Then, when we got introduced to Chapter 10, okay, we decided to go ahead and outline Chapter 10. This is big. Considering in the next 2 days right here, you're writing the essay to your CCRC test, this is a good thing to look at as far as the main ideas of Chapter 10. Laying the foundations. First President, Washington, life in the new republic, rural versus urban, the new capital. Setting precedents, Washington with his cabinet, passing his first act. Then we looked at right over here, Hamilton and his debt process, his 3-step plan to pay off the debt, the national debt, the citizen debt, the state debt, okay? The issue of Hamilton always arguing with Jefferson, debating over the bank, use of the elastic clause, troubles that we have overseas with the French Revolution leading to neutrality by Washington, the two treaties that made you look bad and good in the same time, Jay's Treaty with Britain, them attacking your ships, you basically getting nothing out of the treaty and they can still attack your ships. But then Pinckney's Treaty, the threat of maybe having signed a treaty with Britain makes Spain revoke some of the demands about Florida and so forth, and they give you everything and open up New Orleans and allow you to trade on the Mississippi. Then you also deal with problems at home. Little Turtle in the Northwest fighting Anthony Wayne. The Whiskey Rebellion, Washington coming in there and squashing it like that, showing you have a strong constitution. Washington's farewell address, stay away from 3 things, be aware of them. Parties, because I see Hamilton and Jefferson arguing all the time. Stay away from debt, stay away from foreign alliances, okay? And then the last thing, well, a good guy but made bad decisions as president, Adams. Okay. We looked at the 96 election where you had 2 parties for the first time. And then when he becomes president after that 96 election, even though Hamilton didn't really like the guy, he has to deal with the XYZ affair where he builds the army and the navy up after the bribe of the French when he wants to have peace after they attack their ships. That whole debacle of building up the army and navy and wanting war and then having peace all of a sudden makes him look and the party look gutless, cowardly, and therefore the whole country looks that way. Then, maybe in a stroke of momentary, like, oh my God, everybody's picking on me, I'm going to pick on you, he gets the Alien and Sedition Acts passed. If you're a foreigner, alien, I can throw you out of the country. If you say something seditious, bad about the government, I can throw you also into jail. And therefore, he attacks a lot of Republicans. So the Federalist Party is kind of going downhill a little bit. It doesn't help that Hamilton will get shot later on by Aaron Burr. But the 1800 election, a mini glorious revolution where Jefferson's party wins after a tie, and you having to amend the Constitution, okay? But he becomes president, okay? And the Federalist Party steps down, and you have a change in power, a peaceful power, okay? Peaceful change in power. So this was a good thing to kind of look at, okay? And then after that, we did a lot of notes, a lot of different little things to help us review Chapter 8 all the way throughout Christmas, okay? What did we look at? Well, we took a look at some PowerPoints where we discussed the idea of the debt, and we looked at the debt today. We looked at this sheet right over here with Hamilton's debt. We actually did some math, and we looked at his 3-step plan, okay? Then we also did a foldable on Hamilton and Jefferson, because if you know the 2 men, you know the 2 parties. And then in order to show me that you knew the 2 parties, okay, you worked on this sheet right here, okay, the party platform sheet. These main issues, pro-French, supporting the Alien and Sedition Acts. So where did they go? If you know the 2 men, you know the 2 parties. Jefferson was pro-French, so therefore he doesn't want to mess with the French. He thinks the French Revolution is a good thing, okay? Hamilton, pro-British, he doesn't want to go in and help the French because the British are attacking them at that time. Popular New England, the Federalist Party. Stronger central government, Federalist Party. More power to the people, agriculture, Jefferson's party. So those are things that we discussed right there. And then the last thing, we looked at some of the problems that Adams had, and we looked at the XYZ Affair, Alien Sedition Acts, and Kentucky-Virginia resolutions. XYZ Affair, you look like a weak country. Alien Sedition Acts, you're breaking people's rights. Kentucky-Virginia resolutions. Jefferson actually writing things about his president, that what he's doing and the acts that are passed are unconstitutional. And if they do things that are unconstitutional, then states should not have to follow them. Okay? The straining of federalism. Federalism is being strained at this time, and throughout history, you'll find out that this federalism will strain and strain and strain until the point where it breaks, and you have civil war. Now, obviously, that's a story for later, and the bar of federalism will come back when they revoke the Alien and Sedition Acts. But, you know, these are tense times. You do have some problems as a young country. It's not smooth sailing with a new constitution. There are bumps in the road, okay? So, you know, I'm looking through my folder. I mean, obviously, this is not a great substitution for you just being in class and being here with me, okay? You know, but this is a start. We also, I know we did look at this right here, the cabinet. This was Washington's precedent, okay? We also did look at another thing that was his precedent, and that was this right here, okay? The Judiciary Act, 1789. This is going to be huge for something we talk about Marbury versus Madison later. But this was Washington trying to balance out the branches, and he didn't quite get there, okay? But that was his first attempt, okay? Hamilton's plan, the debt, the part, I mean, yeah, That's what we got. Okay, I'm pretty sure, like I said, there could be little discussions that we had here and there that are, you know, not going to be on the review, you know, as far as me, but saying something here tonight. But you know, that's why you need to be in class. But maybe this helped you out. It got you at least kind of started looking at the right directions. Obviously, there's some quizzes that you can be looking at, warm-ups and all that kind of stuff, and the website. But thank you for joining me tonight. Okay, hopefully it helps. Have a good night. Bye. And good luck. Okay, make sure you work on your essay in class. All right, bye.